Damas y caballeros,
Sonorama.
Pues dicen Justo Betancourt y el señor Mongo Santa Maria. And so the reason we're playing today bunch of orchestra music is because we have in the studio our special guest. And let me tell you something about him. He's been doing a lot of work in Chicago. And sometimes it's kind of rare to find some people doing something really amazing for the Latin music. And so today in the studio, like we say in our social media, we have Patrick Donley from La Peña Orchestra. So Patrick, welcome to Sonorama Vintage Latin Sound. And also, you're the first guest of this 2023. How you doing today?
Hey, Charlie. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, so we were talking about something behind the scenes. Something's happening on Taliojo. And also, I was mentioned in the first hour, like one of my students from Sonic Vibes and Yolo Carly, he did an interview with you like in 2020.
During the pandemic, yeah.
Yeah, and also before the pandemic, you were working in something really special for Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk about a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'll tell our story of the band. So this band it's called La Peña Orchestra, and we got started in 2018 and played a few shows on 18th Street. And at that point, we were 18 musicians, and we were playing music from Latin America that was like orchestra music from around the 1950s, and kind of like how Sonorama plays Latin records from that era. We do that, but with the musicians, and we were doing what is known as transcriptions. Mm-hmm. So I was taking the records and listening to them and writing them out, and then we're going and so we played at a few places on 18th Street. And after that, Navy Pier, and now we're getting ready for our show coming up at Talia Hall here next Thursday in 9 days. So yeah.
And tell me, why specifically focus on orchestras from the 40s, 50s, 60s, and maybe you can find something super early from Latin America. Why that interest in this kind of music?
I feel fortunate to be doing what we're doing, and really it's just been the case of it's the music that I like, so it always caught my ear. And I find that if you look at the story and the lineage of the different bands from like here in the U.S. and then in Cuba and Mexico and Colombia and around the Americas, at that time, and from the 30s around to the 50s, there was kind of a musical dialogue going on between those bands from different countries, and you could tell that they would have heard Glenn Miller in the U.S., or they would have heard Benny Morey's band and Perez Prado, and they're kind of bouncing off of each other about what they're... And I find their artistry to be, really detailed and beautiful and rich, and was just a great accomplishment, in this country and in Cuba and Mexico. And so as a young artist, since I kind of started professionally as a piano player here in Chicago, and I always would go back to those records and kind of think, why don't we, that's not happening as much anymore. So that's what this project is mm-hmm. kind of what we're doing, is like, can we represent that and keep some continuity with some of those bands in the past and bring our own sound into it and just explore it.
Yeah.
So.
And also a little bit about you is you used to live in South America, like early 2000 or?
In 2012 I spent some time in Peru, and that kind of peaked. Well, I had already been interested in Cuban music, and then being in Peru kind of got interested in cumbia more, and you know how it goes. You kind of
Get
influenced by what you're around, and you hear something and like, what is that? So
and also you're going into the rabbit hole.
Yeah,
always.
And I think we can relate that we're those people that just like to dig for things and like be curious about what is this sound, and so.
Yeah. And also your visit to Cuba as well, right?
Yeah, and that was.
I think you were talking with me about that travel to Cuba changed the whole thing.
Yeah, and we went, with some friends who were all musical and DJs and musicians, and knowing some people here in Chicago who have family there in Havana, and when I was over there, I was kind of studying with some musicians and things like that. But yeah, that's all part of my background. And actually, before going to Peru, when I was a student at the University of Michigan, I took a semester in Mali in West Africa.
Oh, cool.
And so I actually lived with a griot family over there and studied, lived in their house and studied music with them for 3 months. So I kind of just, continue to search and discover and think about eventually starting to put out my own artwork or artistry. But even now, our orchestra, mostly we're playing what people would call covers. So for now, it's like we're still presenting the great music that came before us. And I do want to make a record. So eventually, I think people who are following our music, they'll see us kind of, we're going to do this show next week. And then we'll plan on doing another one. And slowly we'll change those covers into being our own versions and put our own music in there, but slowly is kind of how I want to approach that, and at still, echoing the great bands that came first. So.
Yeah. So you're going to be playing next week.
Yeah.
So this is how many times have you been putting together this band, the orchestra, the Peña Orchestra?
The first one was 2019.
For the pandemic.
Yeah. It was, 2019, September, and we did 2 nights in a row. So that kind of feels like one time.
And that was where?
That was Honky Tonk Barbecue.
I think I went to the second one.
First night, and then Tack Room underneath Talia Hall in the second one.
Okay.
And then, so that was the first kind of iteration of that. And then Navy Pier in 2020, really right before COVID hit, because that was February 6th.
Mm-hmm.
And then now this program still like very different from, it just keeps, because I just love writing it, so we just keep changing. Yeah.
And during that time, you took a pause, or you keep working on that project?
I thought about it a little bit. I knew I wanted to do it again, but it didn't seem like a good idea. Because there's too many question marks and, unpredictable. So now we're going for it.
Okay. And now you have the same orchestra or different musicians?
A lot of 80% are the same, and I've added more musicians this time. So we had 4 saxophones before, now there's 5. We had 1 trombone, now we have 2. More singers, lead singers, and we're going to have some dancers too. So it's just, I figure why not? If we're doing it, might as well go big.
Yeah, and checking your social media, especially the La Peña, I saw Rudy Dianda is going to be there.
Yeah, he's joining us too. Yeah, because we're buddies, Okay. So
he's going to be singing, or he's going to be doing
he's going to be singing,
playing some instruments.
Yeah, he's going to be playing guitar, and he'll be singing too a little. I don't want to give it all away, but
Okay.
He's going to be there and joining us for a few numbers, I think 4.
Okay.
So.
And how hard is to put together all this band, and also the process, and also I was talking with you last week, like the process of transcribing all this music is
it's
wild.
Really, yeah. So the process that I'm going through right now is kind of get the set list, figure out what we want to do, what numbers we want to play, and then think about how we're going to do them. Now, with most of what we do is direct transcriptions. which actually is kind of easy because you just got to copy the record. I don't have to think too creatively about should it be this or should it be that. But in order to hear all that, I've got to slow down the record, loop it sometimes, little sections, EQ it sometimes to hear what is that third sax doing. You know what I mean? So that's the fun part for me, because just it's that hunt to try to hear, like, oh, did that guy really play that? And then you end up, I feel like I'm getting to know these orchestrators, these arrangers. Like I was mentioned Rafael de Paz, and I realized that like we're doing 3 songs that he wrote. Now his name's nowhere; it's in the fine print. But I kind of realized like, oh, I really like this guy's way of orchestrating. And then you get inside their mind and what they thought when they were writing those things, and so I have so much fun doing that. And then again, slowly, I want to start putting my own ideas in, but only after I've it's my way of kind of studying them, Yeah.
And also, you've been discovering new stuff. Like mentioned that orchestra director, writers, and all your investigation that you are doing is like giving you new information, right?
Oh yeah, always. Records are super important for that. I mean, I was planning for the show, and Dusty Groove, a local record store, had a record up on their website, old cumbia record. It looked interesting. I picked it up and was listening to it like, wow, this song's amazing. We should do this. And start writing it out, and I realized it's Rafael de Paz did the arrangement, and yeah, so records are definitely have been a super important way to discover music.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And another question about doing the writing and all the arrangements for the musicians.
Yeah.
How many hours you spend to transcribe one song?
Yeah, it just depends, because like I was writing out a song by this band called Orquesta de Música Moderna de Oriente, from Santiago de Cuba. And man, this arranger his stuff is really hard to hear. His band is huge, and my ears were hurting after that one. And that took about 3 days, just to get that one down. So it just depends. And then something easier, I could do it in a few hours. So it kind of it depends on how tricky it is,
Cool. But and also, I want to mention, like, I think, like, officially for the public, this is the first time something like that is happening in Chicago, because I know somebody else is doing that, but it's not focused into the history of music or putting that dedication like you are doing it. It's more like a party, getting together, and people just going to that place just to dance. I don't remember the name of that. I think Don Raimundo.
Yeah.
Don Raimundo was putting together those kind of danzón, mambo, and cha-cha-cha orchestra
at the Willowbrook Ballroom.
Yeah, but it mostly were people like not from our age.
Right.
Yeah, so that was interesting.
No, totally.
And I think especially this venue, like one venue like the legendary Italia Hall.
Yeah.
Is something super important to not just for Latinos. If it's for the music in Chicago, I think it's really important to recognize the Latin music from orchestras, because there was something super special, and to put together an orchestra, it was like
a real.
I mean, how many people you can put in an orchestra? What is the maximum number in an orchestra?
Man. Well, I mean, even there's stories of this guy named Louis Moreau Gottschalk, who in the late 1800s, he was based in, I think he was in Chile or somewhere in South America, but he also split time in New Orleans. And man, he would have, I think, 400 people on stage.
What?
Yeah. And he would have like 30 pianos or something. Like he would just,
Oh.
you know, there was a culture around it, you know.
Yeah, that I know that I know information about that is for me, it's one of my heroes, Mexican musicians heroes, Esquivel.
Oh yeah.
He was doing crazy stuff
Yeah.
back in the 60s, like
Yeah, and the showmanship around it and kind of, yeah.
and also he was one of the first ones to put together a closed circuit. Like he was in one room with a camera, directing the orchestra in another room,
Yeah.
in another building.
Oh yeah.
He was like,
I mean, it's amazing, and I think, you know, and writing it all by hand. Another interesting one is like the Looney Tunes cartoons and all the film scoring and
Yeah.
how it was done back then. You know, it was just the conductors watching the film and
yeah.
following along.
Yeah, and also people from our generation. I think I'm 40, I'm 43. People in the 40s, 50s. We were growing up with all this music orchestra from the cartoons, and we
Yeah.
didn't know about that. We just enjoy the cartoons and we
Yeah.
enjoy the music, but we didn't know about the orchestras until I think I figured out that until I was like 15, because I was like a
like the history of it. And
yeah, and also
Yeah.
I was super interested in music. I was like, I want to be a musician, but my
Yeah.
dad was like, no, you cannot be a musician. You need to be something to make money. I was
Fair
like,
point.
So finally, I'm here on the radio. So
Right?
after many years. Anyways, yeah, very interesting. What are you doing? And so
Yeah, and a point that you brought up is kind of something you brought up is something I've been thinking about the past week or so, is kind of like, how is this event going to play out? Because some people go to Talia Hall expecting kind of a rock show to stay in there and watch the band, but we play dance music, and so we'll just see. You know, I hope people come out to see it and participate. And obviously, if it's like the old days, it's mostly for dancing. And
yeah,
when you see someone, ask them to dance or bring a partner.
yeah, perfect. Okay, so remember, you're listening to Sonorama Vintage Latin Sounds. We have in the studio Patrick Donley, director of the orchestra La Peña, and they're going to be doing a showcase of Antalya Hall on January 19th.
January 19th.
8 p.m.
Thursday.
More information on the website of Talia Hall, and you can follow La Peña Orchestra on social media, on Instagram. And also you can check Sonorama Vintage Latin Sounds. You can check our profile and you can find more information there. Remember, it's Sonorama Vintage Latin Sounds, broadcasting live from Studio B in Bridgeport, the community of the future.